done? Okay, I'm moving ahead. Guys, I'm David Feeney. You can read more about me. This is me and some of my classroom friends. Um, my contact information is here, and I want to thank you for listening, and I hope that you will shout your questions out at any time, every time. I'm going to go full screen with this presentation, slideshow, and hopefully that will still be visible to everybody. Okay. The title of my talk is Behaviorism, Emergence to Emergency. How many people on this call have done this job 100% remotely during the COVID-19 pandemic or since? Shout out yes if you have.
Yes.
Who's that?
Nikki.
Okay, so guys, do us a favor. Just say, it's me, Nikki, and then your answer, because I, for one, can't see the names of everybody who's talking. Thank you. Anybody else worked this job, behavior services, applied behavior analysis, 100% remotely? Anyone else?
It's me, Missy. Yes, I have.
Okay, Missy, Nikki. Okay, going once.
For a brief period of time, for about 2 months, it was totally online.
Okay, so
Yes, Kim.
Kim, okay. Can I ask each person who said yes to give me one sentence about what you're doing and how you're doing it? Who's first?
This is Kim. Using Teams.
Okay, using Teams. What do you do with Teams?
All my meetings. I've actually had clients or parents set up a computer in a room, and I did observations that way as well during the height of the pandemic.
I see. And okay, do you still do that work remotely now?
No.
Okay. One other person. Who's next?
It's Missy.
Missy.
During COVID, and I still do, I live on a small farm. So for my little kids that I have, I bring them out to the animals on my computer, and I flip the screen around so they could see the animals, and I could do some, um, discrete trial stuff with the animals and naming and things like that. With my emotional support kiddos and teenagers, they tend to, with my screen flipped, they will talk to the animals, and then I pretend they're talking to me, and then like will do like my act and aim programming with them, um, using my animals on the screen. It's tended to work really, really well, and I typically am on Zoom. I'll use the platform Zoom, to do that. And it's worked really well to run continue to run the program that I have and get the kids engaged, because once I get them kind of engaged, like viewing the animals and stuff, then I can switch the screen back around and then we're engaging. Especially when everybody first started, with all of the online stuff and I was no longer in person. It was great to bring everybody kind of into the online fold with still feeling like I was there and supporting them. And the parents felt super supported that way as well.
Wow. I did not plant you in the audience, but thank you. That is amazing, amazing testimony. I want to go through a lot of this stuff rapid fire until we get to the point where I bring in the work that I'm doing now in the last 2 weeks. I'm going to introduce me, who I am, what I've done. And my entire career has been about delivering applied behavior analysis interventions 100% remotely. And for me, my emergence was in 1995. But it took a global pandemic in 2020 to make the agencies with whom we work, the field in which we work, and the thought leaders in our academic fields, both narrow and wide, consider that face-to-face delivery of these kinds of services may or may not be best practice.
1995, Dave, is that when you started?
Correct.
Is emergence going to be your first code word?
Yeah, sure. Why not? Everybody.
Take it one slide back if you can. You do that?
Sure, absolutely.
And it'll
Thank you,
be
Tim.
emergence, and just send it my way.
Everyone, if you could use the chat box, and are they chatting just to you, Tim?
Yeah, just to Timothy Joseph.
Choose Timothy Joseph
coming
and
in.
type the word emergence.
Yeah.
Lowercase, uppercase.
We don't
that's
care.
fine. Whichever.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Tim, I don't have my chat room open amongst all these different windows, so, but thank you for the prompt. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Did everybody get a chance to type their code, the word emergence? Okay. 3, 2, 1. Okay. Move on. If you have a problem or you have a question, please shout it out. That means YouTube. Well, what is behaviorism? Okay. In my case, it means 100% online. The way we talk about this format has changed quite a bit. I used to, 25 years ago, talk about in person or not in person. But frankly, the media-rich landscape of working 100% online is personal. I used to talk about face-to-face and not face-to-face. Well, the majority of us are face-to-face right now. In the span of the last 25 years, online media and telecommunications has become so feature rich and function rich and media rich that some of our terms and the way we talk about things are just becoming rusty and antiquated. So I've heard the word in vivo used quite a bit. I call what I've done and championed post vivo, not in person, but after the need for in-person services. Post vivo, it's cute. Any questions? I'll ask before I move on any slide. Any questions? Anyone? 3, 2, 1. Here we go. I'm going to talk about 1996, 1998, 2000, 2003, and 2022. Okay, we're going to move through this incredibly fast until we get to the very bottom. A lot of this is going to be like eye candy. Please, if you see something that catches your eye, it's unbelievable, please shout it out. Shout your question or comment. In 1996, I was the website for a behavior analysis league for accuracy in news and media. So it was a group called Balance. And I had been doing web work. Interestingly, I want to give a shout out to the Wayback Machine at the Internet Archive, where you can actually find copies of this material right back to 1995 and ahead. So it's really, really fascinating to look back on your own digital history and see the kinds of things you've already done. Next slide, any questions? Okay. I was also a webmaster for Behavior Research Company. How many people say yes out loud if you have heard of Behavior Research Company?
Yes.
That's one.
Yes.
Okay. How many
Dave,
people
I
have heard
remember
of Ogden
you had another
Lindsley?
company.
Okay,
Dave,
go ahead.
You had another company earlier, didn't you? That you had another website. I remember.
Yes, Richard. Richard and I are friends. Okay, everybody, I'm going to come out of the closet. So, yes, Richard, I did, but I'll get to that in just a moment.
Okay.
So, at about that time, working, getting a master's degree in behavior analysis and instructional design at West Virginia University, working with the behaviorologists and applied behavior analysis, I developed an interest in doing this kind of work in innovative online services, which at the time were very, very new, like America Online. Back in 1995, this was the first example of a chart of behavior for what I eventually called a course or an educational um, interaction that was about weight loss. And the person that I worked with for 16 weeks, you can see that there were 16 pounds lost across 16 weeks. There was a goal line and a goal target, which the person came in, under, didn't meet their goals, but in terms of harm reduction and increased satisfaction, physical fitness. This was an interaction that was happening 100% remotely via America Online, email, and instant message. So back in 1995, this convinced me that there was a way or a pathway to start thinking about and doing behavior analysis interventions with 0% face-to-face meetings. Next slide. Any questions, folks? I started a company called OnLearn for online education for smoking control, exercise, study skills, and made a few logos, came up with a few ideas like lifestyle modification, LMOD, and worked with a variety of clients privately, again in 1995, 1996. I believe that these logos we're getting into early 1997 at this point. Any questions or comments? Okay. OnLearn focused on lifestyle modification, which my vision is selling an educational course, not unlike an 8-week or 16-week or 12-week semester or quarter type educational interaction that focused on self-counting, self-measurement of behavior, and that impacted smoking control, weight control, and study skills. Any questions or comments? The core of what we did was teaching people remotely to self-measure. How many people who have done their work remotely since 2020 and the COVID-19 pandemic have worked and taught families how to self-measure a frequency of a behavior and report it? Anybody in the room?
I have.
Okay, that's one.
Yep,
Okay, who said yep?
this is Emma.
Okay, Emma, what'd you do? Do you mind me asking? I'd like to hear a little bit from you about that.
It was difficult for sure.
Okay,
To teach parents over telehealth how to measure every time that they provided a reinforcement or every time that the child engaged in behavior. It was really difficult to teach over telehealth for sure.
okay. Anyone else?
I have, but with I'll be honest, I didn't have too much luck on the parent end, like trying to get them engaged with taking the data. I would get maybe half, maybe a little more, half of stuff. And then I decided that the response effort was too high for them. So then I changed stuff. And some of the parents got on board with that. I'm a parent, and my daughter is severely autistic and extremely aggressive and all of that. So when I can't have parents like that, I understand that by the end of the day, you're not going to be taking data. It's not going to happen. You're tired, you're worn out, you're stressed out. So I mailed a couple of my parents just little charts, like dry erase charts. And I was like, just tally And I had the labels pre-up on the chart, and I was like, just tally, take a picture, text me the picture. And that was kind of successful. I got enough to have good data points on that. And then my other guys, my teenagers, I actually had more success with my teenagers taking their self-management data, kind of over the parents, and they were really good. And same thing, um, I set them up with things that they could screenshot to me. Pretty much right away as they're playing their games or doing their stuff, they could tally and screenshot it to me. And that was actually more successful with my teenagers.
Yeah, absolutely. Fascinating. Does anyone else have a story about getting either served persons or their adult caregivers to count some behavior and in some way, shape, or form report it? If not, I'll move on. Okay, definitely tough. Folks, what you're seeing on your screen is an Excel spreadsheet from back in 1996, 97 of someone self-counting their cigarettes smoked per day. And this produced, of course, they reported that, and I felt it was my job as a behavior analyst to chart it, but in some way use that charting to then continue to impact the behavior. And one of the things that I did was called database comic books. And what you'll see is a database comic rendition of that person's behavior. And so, who in the audience wants to go through this with me real quick? Uh, Volunteer, or I'll call on someone.
I'll do it.
Okay, Richard, what do you see about this chart that seems different than other charts you may have seen before?
Well, the fact that the data points are talking and there are bombs going off and flares.
Yes.
And
Yep. So this was meant to be able to not just intake data, not just graphically represent it, but to have it be able to literally speak to the person who is getting this. You have to understand these graphics were created and then emailed, or created and then instant message via the America Online system. So this was a way to recycle data back to a person and try to ensure that they understood and read and thought, or had the experience of verbalizing exactly what I wanted them to say. Richard, do you see this dot right here that I'm circling my cursor around?
yes, the highest count per day,
Yeah, and how many cigarettes was that in one day?
92.
Correct, correct. And so here is the next subsequent highest. That is a Saturday, and we're
89.
at 89. And here is the next subsequent Saturday at a 58. Now, I've had people say, well, you didn't get to zero. But in terms of harm reduction and economic impact, the amount of reduction of, essentially chain smoking had a significant impact on this person in the process of simply self-counting and reporting their self-counted measurements each day via email or AOL instant message. Any questions from the audience at this time? Anything at all? Okay, if not, I'll tell you what I'm going to do
I do have a
is,
question. Was there any follow-up?
pardon me?
Was there any follow-up data later on?
There
After
were.
that? Okay.
So let me see. I want to find, you can see more iterations of data-based comics and ways to make that experience more visual, colorful, and verbal across the entire term of the interaction. Richard here is the same person. Richard, if you could help me, could you describe, say, before intervention one, what you're
So
seeing?
there are two lemon days, as in the old terminology of precision teaching.
Mm-hmm.
There were two outliers that were particularly extreme, 92 and 89. And then you had the 270s, but beyond that, everything was basically in the range of 50 to 60. Oh, no, 40, and then it started to get down to the 40s, but that's after the intervention. So before the intervention, I'd say the modal count was about 53.
Okay. And so at this point, okay, 15 weeks after the start, what people paid for was an interaction of a determined length. So like a course, it was 15 weeks. And so this was the level of smoking and the constantly repeating patterns of weekends across 15 weeks. Now, again, this was not someone who stopped smoking, which was why the focus was on what I called smoking control education, not smoking cessation. And in many cases, quitting was not discussed as a final goal. What was the goal was harm reduction and control. Any questions before we move on? Folks, I want to spend the majority of the time talking about what's happened with this work since the pandemic. So I'm going to
Dave,
go ahead.
I think I mentioned before, is there like a behavior or an intervention that you feel that you've come across that you felt like just couldn't be done via remote learning, and or was something you would discourage, or so far in your study of this has about anything that behavior analysts would do could be done remotely?
It's a philosophical issue, definitely. As people do this more, but then also they start to do it less, as the perception is that perhaps the worst of any pandemic, certainly nationwide shutdowns, are in our rearview mirrors. But it's an open question, Tim. Here's the way I like to think of it. I've gone beyond simply a nonpartisan fact finder, with an academic position and a commitment to quote unquote, non-biased objectivity. I am a advocate and a zealot.
Mm-hmm.
So what I have found, not just using the techniques that I did in 1996, in 2022 when the COVID-19 emergency happened, and people in at least behavior services for autism and developmental disabilities in Pennsylvania went from working remotely with families being unbillable and unethical to being mandatory.
Right.
So because of my experiences, I was able to visualize how to do this and perhaps have a bit of an edge compared to some of my colleagues. But it quickly became clear on many different levels that there were contingencies and meta-contingencies that surrounded the distribution of applied behavior analysis in this way. That is, in 100% distance format. And well, that jury may still be out in terms of what exactly is best practice. As COVID-19 has receded and different agencies the pendulum has swung back, sort of saying, well, the COVID-19 emergency is over, we need to go back to 100% face-to-face distribution and services. That's how our billing is set up. That's how our agency is set up. That's how we prefer to do things. And oh, by the way, face-to-face delivery of these services is best practice.
Okay.
So one example that I've said.
So, Dave, do you think that remote would be your second code word? Would that work?
Am I sure? Absolutely. If everybody could use the chat box and chat to Timothy Joseph.
Yeah.
The word remote, REMOTE. If everybody could do that, again, this is how the CE companies know that you're paying attention.
Yeah.
So I ask everybody in the audience to think of a classic face-to-face goal in many behavioral service jobs, and that is helping with wiping. Okay, helping with wiping. Ring a bell for any of us who have children, for any of us who had served persons and their families who struggle with that issue. So here's a what I've come up with. For those people who feel that face-to-face applied behavior analysis is best practice for some reason, I would ask them, I'd ask some folks on the call, if you're doing face-to-face services with a family, do you go into the bathroom with the served person or the served person and the adult caregiver to directly assist, prompt, clarify, shape, wiping behavior? Can I get a quick yes or no answer from everyone on this
Yes.
webinar?
Yes.
Okay, anyone else?
It's Nikki, and yes, obviously I talked to the caregivers prior, and if they are comfortable with it, then yes.
Okay.
Same as Nikki.
Okay, yes.
Kim, same as Nikki.
All right, so would you folks prefer to do that, or would you prefer to be able to do that kind of intervention, but 100% remotely?
So I actually do some, this is Nikki, some supervision remotely for a clinic in North Carolina, and they do some restroom stuff, but in those situations, I'll normally have someone that's in clinic go in and assist just because I don't feel comfortable having the technology taken in the restroom with the learner.
Okay, and that is not a home.
Nope, that's
not
completely in clinic. Yep.
not the
Not the
parent
caregiver.
or guardian.
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. Okay. So Tim, I think that not only aside from interventions that put you, I have yet to think of one that could not be done remotely.
What about social skills training?
Yes. What about it?
Well, I would think that would be difficult to do remotely.
Okay.
Because, well, there's all the logistical problems of having multiple children in view. There's that, and of course, if there's any kind of aggression problems or out of control. But I guess if you have parents there that can be coached, so I guess that could be done.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, Richard, because one of the things that has become much, much more clear to me during the COVID-19 forced adoption of an innovation, um, and the work that I have done during that very special time, the pandemic, was how central the adult caregivers or parents or guardians are at every phase of making not just a remote program happen, but also systematically being able to increase generalization and fade myself out over time. And it really, to me, has made it such that if you can't get the adult caregiver, guardian, or parent 100% part of the daily or weekly process of working remotely, then that's far more critical to success than, say, kind of technology, video versus audio, or other things that are typically talked about when you're talking about, working remotely and what matters. Does that make sense, Richard?
Yeah.
Okay. And I want to talk about how we're trying to do very, very highly engaging, highly practical work remotely. And I was honored to be able to have one of the adult caregivers and parents of head of household of a family that I work with, who generously agreed to participate tonight and give their unfiltered, off the cuff, from the heart Q&A about what being able to have access to someone like me working remotely did for her and her family. So I'm going to introduce her real quick. I want to make sure that people get the basics of what we're going to talk about in terms of behaviorism 2022. The COVID-19 pandemic is a massive natural experiment on a global scale. And it required both chosen and mandated use of an innovation on a scale unprecedented in human history. And where that washed on the shore of behavioral services are the stories that I'm hearing of people on this call who have been mandated, forced, and or chosen to work remotely during the different shutdowns and after. There's an avalanche of evidence that behavior change interventions can be delivered 100% online and compete effectively with traditional in-person delivery. It's important that ABA practitioners and thought leaders deal with the economic and ethical issues about working remotely. There's evidence-based, transparent, and reasonable support that 100% online delivery could significantly, I use the word exponentially, increase access to behavior services for people who would have no access to behavior analytic engagement or knowledge without 100% remote delivery. And that's with or without a pandemic to motivate the service to be offered in that way. I hear a lot that in-person delivery of behavior services is best practice. But to me, that's an evidence-free prejudice. It's also, I believe, unethical. And I see a lot of discussion and centrality about ethics in applied behavior analysis. But not practicing remotely, deciding that services for applied behavior analysis either don't or can't or shouldn't work in a 100% remote distribution system or modality is going to result in systemic denial of services to millions. I'm not just talking about the continental United States. There are millions of people around the world who could benefit from a remote 100% online consultation modality with an applied behavior analysis, a good old-fashioned licensed behavior specialist, or even a BCBA. And it gets to the point where the opportunity to do good uh, starts to make some moral claim on the ethics of people who either can't, won't, or don't prefer to work in that modality. So what I want to do is introduce a lady who's the head of household for a family that I'm working with right now, live at this time. And I've left it up to her whether she will use her name or not. Nothing against it, but I feel it's her choice. She's agreed to answer questions and talk about how we work together with her and her family. And I want to introduce Mom. Mom,
How you doing, everybody? Good evening.
Hello.
Good
folks,
evening.
I want to thank you for being here. Tim, to me, it's pretty rare that a served person or the head of household of a family receiving services attends or has a voice in these events. Is that accurate?
I've never seen it before, and I go to a lot of webinars and in live conferences, live in-person conferences. So it's a rare event, yes.
We're talking about a family who, for better or worse, whatever benefit is conferred by working with someone 100% remotely on behavioral issues. This person was right there with me and can speak to that issue in a way really that I can't. So, how should I address you, Mom? Do you want me to use your name or stick with Mom, or what are we going to do?
Mom is mine.
Okay.
Always been mom. So
I'm going to share some visuals that, again, you were kind enough to allow me to share. Mom, tell me what's going on in this screenshot and collage of a Zoom meeting.
on this particular day, during our session with Dr. Dave, my son is very dependent on me. And I want to get him to do more things by himself simply because I know I can't live forever. Okay. COVID has pushed that to the front of my head. And so that's something that now I'm fully aware of. You don't have tomorrow. And so one of his things is he loves vegetables. He absolutely loves vegetables. But what I noticed was if I cut them, he will eat them. If I don't cut them, he'll never eat a vegetable, but I know he can do it. So on this particular day, Dr. Dave just said, "Hey, can we do it now?" And I was like, "Hey, that's a good idea. Let's do it." So I went and I got all of the materials, and right there, I started giving him instructions on, how to hold the cucumber, how to hold the knife, which knife he was going to use, and just directing him in cutting and slicing the cucumber on his own.
Okay, so let me jump in here and add some narrative that I'm doing with the visuals as well. And folks, I assume you can see my cursor moving. Mom, whose hand is that?
That is mine.
That is yours. So, what is absolutely critical for people to understand is I've never met this family. Mom, we ever met?
Nope, only online.
Okay, and love to meet you someday, but totally optional. But what's absolutely critical is the fact that this is not remote, not just remotely administered discrete trial training for a skill that your loved one had rarely, if ever, done at all in life, correct? At the time that these screenshots were taken.
Correct.
Right? But it's absolutely critical that the parent is there, so it's not simply a one-on-one behavior analyst served person relationship, but a one-on-two behavior analyst adult caregiver served person relationship. That's absolutely critical to making the majority of remote behavioral interactions effective. But I don't think that that's particularly unique to remote behaviorism. I think that kind of parent buy-in has significant impact on success and a case, whether it's face to face or not. So, Mom, you at my direction put all the materials out, and he started chopping. Correct?
Correct.
He started chopping.
Yeah, and also my son has a very he likes Dr. Dave, and so having Dr. Dave there and present, and you know, allowing me to go through these motions with my son. My son also he wants to do a good job. So I think Dr. Dave's impact and just his presence on the screen and hearing his voice, and my son is like, okay, Dr. Dave said I need to do this, and then he already has it in his mind. Dr. Dave said this, and mom is going to direct me through it. And I think together it works. It works for him.
So interestingly, there's many more people more astute about Skinner's verbal behavior analysis than myself, but it is interesting the concept of audience and verbal behavior in a 100% remote delivery thing. I am probably 60 miles away from this family, and yet I am an effective audience in real time
Absolutely.
for all of this. So, Mom, we're going to move forward. He didn't stop at one vegetable, correct, Mom?
Correct. We decided to move on to something different because, again, my son loves he loves vegetables and he loves salads. So we decided to see how he did with chopping up some lettuce. Which is a little bit more difficult because of the leaves and all that good old stuff. But he did really really well. He did really well with this. He took his time. You can tell he wasn't happy because he didn't have that. He didn't expect to be doing those things.
Correct, correct. Not at all. This was the first time we sprung it on him. And that's another point I want to make sure to, and I actually asked her loved one. I said, I want you to use your hand and tell me if the activity you're going to do, which is cutting a cucumber or cutting a vegetable, does that make you feel 5? I love it. I really love doing this. I want to do this all day, every day. Or does it make you feel 0? I hate this. I can't stand it. I don't ever want to do this again in life. Or is it a 1, 2, 3, 4? And I just use that very, very simple visual thing. And he said that it was a 4. It was very close to something I never ever want to do now or again.
Yeah.
So this is really a stern, a capture of a facial emotion. This is not associated with happiness. However, he did do it quite effectively. Now,
Yes.
Mom, after that day, and we happened upon this way of working together, I did ask you to I did ask you and your family to try to chop every single night,
Yes.
every single day. Try to chop daily.
Yes.
And what did I ask you to do each day, Mom?
When he did it, we sent you a picture of what he chopped, or or those things that he chopped in a meal, or things like that, so that you can see it and he could see it as well.
So one aspect of remote interactions is that they can have more engagement across a service duration than simply a face-to-face meeting might allow. So with that sort of an oral behavioral contract, we had an agreement that any and every night that he chopped, he agreed to have mom text me a picture of it. Someone mentioned texting, okay, earlier in the call, earlier in the talk, and about how you got better results from texting, and that doesn't surprise me. Texting for me is absolute. It's baked in the cake of remote interactions. Mom, you and I text quite a bit, and we have more engagement than simply talking on a certain appointment or on a regular basis, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So, Mom, can you tell us real quick? You talked about how things got a little more complex between cucumber and lettuce, but this set of images shows increasing complexity too, doesn't it, Mom?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Tell us about how he got more complex.
As he got comfortable with the chopping motion, and we started with the cucumber and the lettuce, and those were typical things that he would normally eat on a daily basis in one, whether in a salad or just side of something. But then he realized I was using other things in the dinner. And so I was like, you know what, did you do your chopping today? And he'll say no. And then he would say, okay, I'm gonna do this, because he's seen I already had it out. So you can see like there's celery, which is something we normally eat, but the cabbage, if you know what a head of cabbage looks like, that's not a difficult, it's not an easy chop. So I was very surprised to see him tackle that. And then you have the bell pepper, and on the bot on the last two at the bottom, we did a sort of like a rice salad, and he had lunch the last day. But I was very what made me really happy about all of this is not just the variety in which he cut, but the fact that a lot of it he did it on his own.
Yeah, I wanted to punch that point, and you hit it. You found that over time, because he was chopping almost every day, sending a picture by text almost every day,
yes,
which I have as, like a scrapbook of his success. He started to initiate unprompted, unassisted. Correct, Mom?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And tell us a little bit about what's happening here.
So another thing my son has is he has this is another thing he loves. I'm a smoothie person. He loves smoothies. I love smoothies. He watches me do it every day. But over the course of years, I have just I would take half and give him half, just doing it. But again, I'm trying to change the way I do things with him, and so he would not do it by himself. He understands like how to do it. He watches me do it every day, but he won't do it. So on this particular day, this was another Dr. Dave said, "Hey, can we go in the kitchen now and maybe have him make a smoothie?" And I said, "Why not? We have everything in the kitchen." So what you see is a setup of all the ingredients that he could possibly use, whether it be some or whatever he wanted for that day. And this is something he watched me do over and over again. So I did give a couple of prompts with him making the smoothie, but he was able to put it together pretty quickly and accomplish that task on that day.
Now, Mom,
Proud
in terms of complexity, okay,
Mm-hmm.
suddenly we're measuring, right, Mom?
Yes,
Complex.
it's a lot of measurement.
Suddenly we have liquids.
Yes.
I mean, this is like, a jump up in terms of composites and groups of skills happening together. For the first time, we have electricity and devices.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. Things he would normally shy away from because he doesn't really like loud sounds, and that's the autistic thing. I think we all know that. But he has learned that, hey, if I want this, I know I can grin and bear this sound because I want this. So yeah, that's him with the finished product. He did a green blueberry banana smoothie that day.
So bear in mind, Mom, you're using your regular cell phone.
Yes.
Okay, you're using a regular tablet or laptop that your family already had, no sophisticated devices, or it's affordable and accessible to you and your family, correct?
Yes.
Would you do you think that what benefit is there um, to you about working remotely?
Um, well, number one benefit is just I'm here. I don't have to drag him out the house because my son is 6'1". And just because he's 6'1" and thin, sometimes when he's having a rough day, it's a rough day. And he's very sweet. He doesn't have big aggression issues, but when the day is rough, the day is rough. So I like the fact that, he can be in his safe space. I don't have to fight with him. For the most part, our sessions are done in his room. And it just gives him also security being in his own space. So I noticed that it's definitely easier on him and it's easier on me. I don't have to rip and run. We can set a time and we can be there at that time and not have to compete with anything. And I like the fact that you have made yourself just so available via text and things like that. It's always easy to connect with you. Um, so it just all comes together to work for my family.
And because your loved one is himself of adult age,
Hmm.
we have a three-person text, and he receives the text that I send and you send, and he participates in the texting as well.
Yes.
Um, Now, Mom, let's say that someone said, "Oh, well, somebody could come into your house and do this.
Hmm.
Someone could come into your house and do this." Um, but what would be the advantages of working remotely, even if someone would come to your house and do this
Advantages for them or for me?
for you, for you and your loved one? How would it be better to choose working remotely, even if someone were going to come to your house and do this with you face to face?
This may sound funny, but when you're at home, I think you're comfortable, you're relaxed. I don't know about anyone else, but with me, when someone new is coming into my area, I go into a little frenzied mode where I have to clean everything and everything has to look a certain way. So I actually get just a high level of crazy going on before the person even gets there. um, which may sound crazy to some people, but it's a thing. It's a thing. Also, I think some people are just very very private, and I'm one of those people. So I like the fact that because technically you're a stranger, you don't really know me that well until you spend some time with me. In this day and age, I'm a little bit more, I guess you can say, wary of people that I don't know. And so for me, it is what's the word? It's just a level of comfort I have without having strangers kind of like walking through and scoping my home. You just never know who you're dealing with. That's just how I personally feel. I know some people don't have that feeling. I just do. I've had a lot of experiences in life and not all of them have been pleasant. And so that's just something that I think makes me value that more, if that makes sense.
It makes sense to me. Are there any questions from folks in the audience for Mom before we wrap this up? I'm a little over time, and any questions for our guest? Okay, going once, going twice. Tim, any questions?
What do you think would be the next? What would be the next step for this client? You just like you've kind of come up with a lot of good things and a good reinforcement, like things that he likes to do. Okay, let's make it happen. So what would be, and Dave, for you too, what would be the next step you think, or maybe you don't know yet, but
Oh, well, I'll say that these goals have come from Mom. Okay, so it is Mom that drives and chooses what's next. So, Mom, no wrong answer, but okay, he's chopping, he's making smoothies. What what next?
Oh, the next big thing for him, which I would really like to push more, is his independence outside of the home. Getting him more comfortable with going into a store without me and doing those tasks and being able to come back out to the car and say, okay, this is what I've done. We have started on that where I have followed him around the store with a little video camera to see how he feels about it. He gets
And
a sense.
you've shared those videos
Yes,
more than
yes, I
once
have.
with me. Yep.
Going to the post office, things like that. But now I'm starting to be braver with the stores. It's really me. I noticed that I have been the bottleneck in him not getting more into the community and being able to do those things in the store by himself. So now I find myself, yes, we go in together, but I'll give him a list and say, okay, you go find this, and I'm gonna go find these things. We're gonna meet back here, and yes, I'm walking around the store having a heart attack, a full blown heart attack, but it's working itself out.
Mhm.
Sometimes I can give him the time and he can come back to me, but sometimes I just can't wait for him to come back and I'll go find him. So it's me. I'm working on me as I'm working on him.
Yep.
But
Yep. Yep. Yep.
my big hope is to just ride up to a store, give him a list, and say, okay, I'm going to stay in this car and you're going to shop today without me.
And just so I could answer the question based on goals like that, Tim, I would say I'd love to ride along on mom's cell phone, being able to have mom and family hear me, see me, so I can be that audience while you're walking around. And then we lengthen the leash, mom, so that you're walking
Mm.
6 feet away, 12 feet away, 30 feet away. You sit at a bench inside the store. Maybe he takes the phone with me talking, some variation of that. So we just made next week's uh, next week's goals. That's great. I'm a little over time. I want to thank Mom. Thank you so much. I've never seen a presentation like this, and your voice is so critical and so important, and it's why I do this kind of work. Mom, do you think he'll have these skills forever, long after I'm gone?
I think so. I really do. We're gonna, no matter how big or how small, we'll keep working on the same skills, and as long as we're with you, you'll know his progress because I'll keep sending the pictures.
Yep. Keep texting me.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Mom.
Thanks
Thanks
for having
everyone
me.
for listening. I am over time. If anyone has any questions for me or anyone else, otherwise, Tim, I'm ready to hand it over.
Okay. Dave, just go ahead if you want to relinquish the sharing, and then I'll just
Sure will.
slip
1
right
second.
into mine. And yeah, that's I put enough of my little intro, and we can skip right to that. And I'm gonna go to sharing my screen. Oh, probably. Hey, Dave.
Yep.
Maybe goals would be the last one for you for the code word. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Everybody, please use the chat to text the word goals, GOALS, to Timothy Joseph. And thanks, Tim, for letting me be part of this.
Hey, thank you for. If you knew the whole story, Dave and I went through a lot to try and put this together, and so and of course all of you coming, and Mom and everybody. So I'm gonna move at a fairly good pace, but I'll get it all in. This is about discrete trial training to assist competency to stand trial restoration. Now, the reason, what am I doing here? I started out in forensic psychology. I worked at a forensic psychiatric hospital for a number of years, and this is one of the main things that we did, and I'll get into more explanation of it later. However, while I was there, I did realize that this was partly an educational and a reinforcement problem and a skill acquisition issue. That in order for someone to be able to go to court, you need certain skills, and that's essentially what the law is saying, which I'll get into that in a little bit. So that's a pretty quick intro. But because of my time at the state hospital, I became interested in applied behavior analysis, and that led me to be a BCBA and led me to be I'm in a doctoral program now, and this is part of my ever-growing dissertation project is competency to stand trial, if I can get things going. So the first code word, I know you just did one, but here's another one. Just put in competency, send it right to me. Competency is going to be the code word for all the CE seeking people. Just kind of put that in there. I'll leave that up there a minute. So I went on to be a BCBA, and I worked at some different places. And I will speak a little bit about the potential remote aspect about this as well. But now I'm trying to combine the two areas. That's become my mission. So for this webinar, understanding of competency to stand trial and how it is of importance to those with disabilities in the criminal justice system. I'll go over the literature. We have an expanding issue with this. We have a lot less of the large state psychiatric facilities. There's questions about how well outpatient care is covering the needs of people with different psychiatric conditions, with autism. And then those people, because in part due to those lack of services, they're getting caught up in the criminal justice system and could receive what's called a competency commitment. So discrete trial training, teaching, whatever you want to call it, could be of use in the CST cases. And the third objective is identify one ethical and one practical issue in using ABA techniques to assist in cases of CST. So, you'll get all that in spades here in a second. Okay, the legal concept of trial competency presumes a sufficient present ability to consult with his or her lawyer with a reasonable degree of rational understanding and similar rationality to discern and weigh the consequences of charges against the alleged defendant. And by the way, I try to reach this is from this book, Behavioral Forensics. He's got some good, very much in the assessment realm. Douglas Rubin, I'd love to meet with this guy. I tried to track him down, but it's a pretty good book, Behavioral Forensics, where he talks a little bit about competency. And for a while, I would go around and almost imply that I was the only one in behavior analysis that was interested in this area. That's not true. As I've gone to other conferences, I've seen other people that have worked with clients in this same area. So very briefly, we have Dusky v. United States, which was the court ruling, says the defendant understands charges against him or her and is able to assist in his or her in the legal defense process. Those are the two prongs. There's also what's called Drope versus Missouri a few years later, about a decade or so later, that basically is saying, their threshold for raising this issue doesn't necessarily have to be very high. So the person could be able to care for themselves, do things that maybe would not get them put on another kind of psychiatric commitment, but if they're having difficulties in these areas, the issue of competency can be raised. This is a good article on it, an overview of competence to stand trial, Stephen Hodge in the Indian Journal of Psychiatry. It goes into the legal concept of competence to stand trial has ancient roots in some kind of mentalistic thinking is where it originates from. A competent defendant is a requirement of the criminal justice system because it reflects the interests related to the dignity of the process the accuracy of adjudication, which is the court process, and a respect for the autonomy of the defendants. Criminal defendants are there to make decisions, on their own welfare. That's why this matters. In the United States, legal decisions have established the contours of the requirements related to competent participation in adjudication. Forensic psychiatrists have operationalized the requirements for assessment purposes. They have a certain list of things that they have to ask, and the defendant would then have to be able to answer. And if they don't have the skill to answer those questions, then they may remain incompetent. And it's my contention that if the person can be found competent to stand trial, whatever the situation, it's in everyone's best interest that this does take place. So this article, a survey, and if you have, I'm moving a little fast, but if there's things you want to ask, jump right in. I see the chats very quickly, but you can also take yourself off mute and ask. Survey of national trends in psychiatric patients found incompetent to stand trial. Reasons for the reinstitutionalization of people with serious mental illness in the United States. Reinstitutionalization. There was a deinstitutionalization, and now they're out and they're being found, get in trouble, and they're found incompetent to stand trial, and they be reinstitutionalized. They end up back in the psychiatric hospital. So recent information indicates the number of forensic patients in state hospitals has been increasing, largely driven by an increase in patients referred to state hospitals and is incompetent to stand trial. The surveys indicates that most states are facing this issue. Most of the states are facing this issue, and it's related to insufficient services in the community. And this is from 2011. Pirelli, Goat Diner, and Zapf. And I went to John Jay College. A meta-analytic review of competency to stand trial research. And there was 68 studies between 1967 and 2008 that compared competent and incompetent defendants on a number of these different variables. So the most robust findings were that defendants diagnosed with a psychotic disorder were approximately 8 times more likely to be found incompetent than defendants without, and the likelihood of being found competent was approximately double for unemployed defendants as compared to those employed. The likelihood of being found incompetent was also double for defendants with a previous psychiatric hospitalization compared to those without. So we are talking about the chronically mentally ill, or those that have those kinds of conditions and have a record for it. Now, I went on a little campaign to find people that I could find participants for a study I'm going to tell you about. But it was through that, then, I got this, somebody mailed this to me, the APA monitor on psychology, and lo and behold, they've got this was from June 2022, they've got a special section on incompetency cases. It's become a hot topic. So a growing number of people with serious mental illness are getting entangled in the legal system, often for minor crimes. And we did certainly see that at the hospital. Psychologists are figuring out how to get them essential medical care instead. We had a guy that was in there for stealing a blanket from a Salvation Army drop-off box. They caught him, and he got caught up in a misdemeanor and was found incompetent. And we had him for over a year. He wouldn't have spent that much time in anything if he'd gotten convicted of that. One guy was a case of mistaken identity. The police saw him. When he sees the police, he gets running. They chased after him, and he's arrested for resisting arrest and found incompetent, and ends up in the hospital. So it becomes pretty important stuff, and he was one of the people that was difficult to help restore to competency due to communication, cognitive abilities, things like that. So for this one, it's got a set of articles on the nationwide problem. and they explore some of the alternatives to the current system because it is becoming such a pressing issue. And I've seen a lot of this, the very things that they talk about the lack of services, about the increasing use of the psychiatric system to deal with criminal defendants. And there's a whole series of other articles that are in there. It was really, it was quite a hitting pay dirt when I came across that monitor on psychology. So there's going to be a few more things on that. And I just saw that. Yeah, Kim, it's in North Dakota. I did speak about it there. For those of you that remember that, and I know it's become an issue there. They got a small section where they get a good little concise description of competency to stand trial. And it's usually going to be the public defender that will raise it. Other court players will raise the issue of competency when they feel the need to. And make the distinction. Insanity is not competency. Insanity is your state. Much more sticky issue, I think. Refers to the defendant's state of mind at the time of the crime. Well, we're dealing with them as of right now, if the trial were to take place right now. Okay, so I've got a proposed little study here that I'm going to go over with you, that I've made some progress on, and I hope it's just a sampling of what could be, because I think this issue could be huge, and that's why I wanted to have this meeting with all of you. We're dealing with 3 different elements, 2 verbal operants and a matching task. And I hope that those of you that are practicing behavior analysts or psychologists or whatever you like to call yourselves, behaviorists, this is the same kind of techniques that you're very familiar with applied to an area where it's not commonly applied. I'm going to use a multiple baseline design, multiple baseline across behaviors. The behaviors are these 3 elements, okay, of matching, tacting, and the intraverbal skills. And it's going to be on the courtroom terms. So the reason I believe it's relevant is the defendants, clients will be found incompetent. They may not know the terminology. They may not be able to express themselves sufficiently well in a psychiatric interview or to their attorney in the process. And this is helping them develop those skills. Discrete trial training, I think there's some familiarity with this, a given opportunity to give a response. So we have some examples, flashcards, answering a prompted question, pointing to a sample color or shape, cutting up instruction to cut up vegetables, or identifying vegetables, tacting them. In this study, these same kinds of discrete trial techniques are used to learn terms relevant to the court. Okay. So it ends up being a session. This can vary quite about 10-15 minutes for each participant. And we go through these different areas. It's usually about 7 items. I've got them divided up into a data sheet by a set. So at a session, it'll be 7 tacting items, about 7 intraverbal questions, about 7 matching concepts. So the baseline, we'll just go through them and inquire on the elements. Match this, tack this, answer about this. So the intervention, we're going to use some techniques of errorless learning and prompting hierarchy as needed. Where are we at? Okay, I think we're doing okay. So here they are, the 20 courtroom terms that I'm working on. You'll notice the ones with the little stars, these are ones where they are only intraverbal. So we don't have a visual representation as in matching and tacting. So these kinds of concepts, alibi, felony, the misdemeanor, sentence, and verdict, are only talked about. The others have a visual stimuli, which we'll show you here in a little bit. I don't have, I have defense attorney. I don't have public defender, those kinds of concepts. I don't have. Now, as far as why I chose these were the same terms. We kind of do what we're used to. These are the same terms that we would use in our testing for incompetent defendants when we're in the hospital. A little bit of variation on them. And these are kind of the things that I'm predicting that a defendant would need to know to minimally work with his attorney. And we go through a process of how they can identify them. So, but it's a good question of what terms to specifically use. They're commonly used by psychiatrists and judges in competency evaluation. So here we have a little matching task. So we'll have, this guy, a judge up here. This is to represent the prosecutor. This is to represent a witness. As a matching exercise, we can ask which of the above three cards matches this card. The participant will have an opportunity to answer to match. If correct, we will move on. If the answer is answered incorrectly, then a hierarchy of prompting will be implemented after shuffling the top three cards. So I've shuffled them now. The top three cards with the prosecutor on the left, the witness in the center, and the matching judge at the right. The card to be matched is now in the closest proximity to its twin. The judge card, and this is the prompting after he's gotten it incorrect. The judge card is prompted by moving the object closest to the card to be matched. Match is once again the instruction given. Gestural physical prompts are subsequent options used using a hierarchy. Okay? Dave?
Tim, we've got a question, and do you want to do a code exercise right now?
Oh, I'm coming up on my...
okay. We got a question in the chat from Emma Dugan. Why did you choose these terms specifically?
Yeah, those terms, they were the same ones that we would train. We would have testing on this and like a legal education class. So it's not, I haven't, it would be a good thing to research which words are the deficits, but it's kind of a legacy to the past of picking up right where we left off when we do what we called legal education classes there in the hospital. There it was a slight adjustment, but and we found like some people would use some of the terms, but needed help. Like instead of the cop in the courtroom, it was the bailiff and things like that. So it's habit in part.
Okay.
And matching would be if you can put matching into the and just send it. Here they come. Yep. Send it right to me, and that will be our next code word, which is a sign that we're moving along. So, any more questions up to this point?
So I also do competency restoration with clients. Do you think that those words that you use could be changed to ones that they are exposed to more, like in my courtroom, for instance?
Yeah, I mean, the ability to vary and to be versatile is certainly there. So, as long as, and it could be, training for their attorney, that they would say, the typist is the court reporter, or, the guy on your team is the defense attorney. So right now we're starting out with some difficult terminology, but certainly that kind of adjustment and maybe that kind of shaping could be a part of the program. I'm open to it. Okay.
Tim,
Go ahead.
this is Maria. I have a question. So when you do your training, you said that you have I'm trying to find, I took a screenshot of yours that you have, like seven tacking items and then 7 interverbal, then 7 matching concepts.
Right.
Do you, you're aware of the competency restoration modules, right?
Yeah, with some of them, there's different ones, but
Okay, because after I had spoke with you at that conference and I made a bunch of the visuals and things like that, and the individual I was taken through on this did very well on the matching, but a lot of the terms, you can't find a picture for them, and that's where I just saw the individual just shut down. It was too much for them, and then I start seeing a lot of escape maintain behavior. So I'm almost wondering now, I failed them. Maybe I should have mixed up the matching with just a few of those each time so that, kind of like the high P, he was successful with, yeah.
So, yeah, for those 7 kind of abstract terms, that where I'm thinking that we could go on this, if I'm responding effectively. Well, with the ones that are not those abstract terms like alibi, felony, then you have a visual match. And then you could present, once they've gotten good at matching and tacting, then you could ask the question and then present the visual stimuli. For things like alibi, felony, verdict, we may have to work on some concept analysis. And that's where, okay, a verdict is a decision. It's a decision at the end of the trial. It's a decision made by whom? Judge or the jury, Sentence is a decision after the trial. Who's it made by? Will go. I mean, there where it gets complicated, we can say, it's a decision made by the judge. A plea is a decision. When is it made? It's made before the trial. Who's it made by? It's made by the defendant. So I think some of the kind of the Markle type concept analysis might be in order for some of the more sophisticated kind of terms. And I am going to get into more of that, of what I'm finding when I'm running through these cards with the people that I'm working with now. So is that? I hope that's a sufficient answer for the time being.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. And this is an example. This is like what we were just talking about. So the intraverbal verdict, the 2-sided flashcards will have the term on one side and the definition on the opposite sided. You may present definition side and ask the participant to identify the then correct term. So your basic flashcards. And this is kind of of the basic study, using a visual representation of it, the tacting, the matching, we do the baseline, we do the intervention. Was not able to do generalization initially, but we'll have a generalization probe toward the end, and there I'll have like videos of like the old Perry Mason show video clips. And you could just have somebody will walk in and say, who's the guy that just walked in? That's the bailiff. They'll have a conversation. Who's the guy that spoke last? That was the judge. And that'll be a set of generalization probes once we've gone through tacting and matching. The Slater method, is talked about in one of those previous articles, we have used also what we call the CAST MR as an assessment, which is similar principles. So here we have a matching set, portion of the matching set data sheet that we would go ahead and put our data on probe section, and then we can go as far as we need to. But if we just went 5 and we got 80%, so for pluses, plus, 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 then we can go ahead and say that they're getting at 80% in the study. So where I'm at now, and I'm glad I got enough of time, I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to travel for a little bit. And so bear with me, and if you have, well, we're going through the darkness, so you can't see how messy the house is for now. We'll go down here and have a little demonstration. I'll see if I have to remove. I'm gonna go on mute in case there's. How well can you see these images here, the cards that are on the table? Can they be seen? Go ahead and just you can take yourself off mute and say that they're being seen or not seen.
They are being seen.
I see them.
Okay.
I can't read them. I can see them.
Yeah, you won't be able to need to read them. Gina's going to help me out with a little demonstration here. So, and I'm glad that my leash here reaches all the way to the computer. So, okay, so we'll be here. We've shuffled the cards about. And I'm going to go ahead and present a card. Match. Okay, so she's actually gone to the subpoena card. I wouldn't say that right there, but I'm going to, let's, do some reshuffling. And I'll positional prompt the matching card closer to her and hopefully make it a little easier. Match. Pick them up. Judge, you got it. You got the judge. So I've done a little bit of correcting there to make it a little bit easier. Now, if I have one of the court reporter, I could say tact. I don't know if you can hear, but what's this?
Court reporter.
Court reporter, you're absolutely right. So she's successfully tacted. That was a little blurry, the court reporter. Then if I have intraverbal, I'd say a person who answers questions about what they know in a criminal case. Okay, well, the defendant is going to be the person that's in trouble. If somebody is up there speaking about what they know in a criminal case, that's going to be what we call a witness. So who's the person who answers questions about what they know in a criminal case? A witness. And I think that'll be a common answer because some of them have elements. That's the concept analysis. It's the witness. Great job. And now I'm going to give you your table back too. So, it's like, I appreciate you can open that back up. Okay, so that was thank you. That was a little demonstration of what we had and the kind of thing that I'm doing right now. Now, I'm going to get into a little bit about what it was to put this kind of study together and where I'm at now, and that's going to require me to share once again. And here we're right back where we left off. Do you have any questions at this point?
Do you use this for individuals just with like developmental disabilities, or are you also using this for like SMI clients?
Well, where I'm at right now is I went to, I was just going to get into that because my original plan for the study was to go to the same state hospital with actual defendants who were already found incompetent to stand trial. Went there, had several meetings. It was approved by the IRB. And then because of another wave of COVID, they had severe staff shortages. And the medical director wrote back and said, nope, we can't do it. We have National Guardsmen called out, and we just don't have the staffing to permit something like this. So I went to another state hospital, much farther south, and I was ultimately told the same thing. Well, then finally, at a place that remains going to remain undisclosed, I got approval at a center treatment for autism, and the couple clients that they've got for me, I think were ideal. And the only way we could do it is, this is very Dave Feeney-esque, but over Zoom meetings. So it was remotely done. So this can be remotely done, and it has been kind of slow progress, but and we got into the baseline data. The one client is just soared through it. He loved it. He could be his own attorney, as far as I'm concerned. The other, he was able to do matching, worked out well. Tacting, having some trouble, and then a lot of trouble in the intraverbal realm is where we're at with that particular in the baseline part. And then we have the potential to get more clients from there. But fortunately, at the Autism Center, that's where we've been able to have some success. But I see it applicable regardless of diagnosis. There's a lot of clientele that would be suitable for an intervention like this. And ethical issues for using ABA in these cases. And I'm perfectly willing to hear out from the audience if you think there's more to this, and I think that there probably is, because we are kind of stepping into an ethical area maybe that we had not been in before, a setting that we're not commonly in. I sometimes get asked, are they really competent? So you go in and you help them understand the terms and they can communicate. And the idea being, can they really work with their attorney? And I would say if it was just a matter of learning the terms or even being able to demonstrate the concepts, that isn't necessarily all there is to being competent. They could be well versed in these areas and still be incompetent for other reasons. So, for example, if you have a psychotic delusion that the judge framed the whole case against you, and that's not really the case, that would be an example of someone still being incompetent, even though they're able to learn the skills. However, if it's a matter of that question to me is almost along the lines of you work with children or adults to learn terms. Well, have they really learned it, or have you just trained them? Competent is competent, so it will not be simply a matter of being able to learn the terms. They still have to go before a psychiatrist at the hospital, and or possibly a psychologist. However, and be reviewed. However, what we would be able to do with behavior analytic work is to show progress, so that they were not able to understand. They could only understand 3 of the 20 terms. Now they can tact 19 of the 20 terms. They did not know any of the intraverbal terms successfully. Now they know 50% of the intraverbal terms, which could be a very useful instrument to show in their case to like present to a judge or the psychiatrist. We would not be there opining them as competent. We would be there to help show progress and behavioral skill development. And that goes to the idea like, should we be involved in cases like this? And it has to do, I think that this question is, is it really in their best interest? Well, unfortunately, the grip of the criminal justice system, it can go all kinds of ways, and that varies quite a bit by jurisdiction, how these different states handle these cases. Some are prone to simply drop the charges, which to me is logical legally if they have not been found competent. In the state of Indiana, they kind of get around that by just going ahead and putting them on a regular commitment under the idea that, well, if they're this incompetent, they should have been on a commitment anyway, and they can usually find something about their skill level or dangerousness to themselves or something like that. However, I fear it could end up being a long-term process, regardless of what the crime is. And if the crime is serious, then it's kind of turned into using the psychiatric system and the competency commitments as a means of incarcerating people instead of going through the process where they actually are in court and have their day in court. So where I'm at with it now is, for these kinds of cases, I haven't seen one where we shouldn't proceed with it if we can help. Should we touch the criminal justice system with a 29.5-foot pole? In other words, our involvement in this are really being helpful. And I would say, carefully we'll approach it in the ways that we can help and show data to show skill improvement or behavioral improvement where we can. This is not something to cure all the ills with the criminal justice system. I wish something could do that. But there's a lot of literature, not just for competency, for juvenile justice, over the many years, and things that were put in place of contingency management programs that have been helpful, at least shown by what's been written over many years, but for different reasons, economic reasons and political and just changes in the times, these things aren't implemented anymore. However, it was just last year I got called from a place in Illinois that they were looking for hiring BCBAs for their, in 6 different counties for their juvenile justice program, which I think is ideal. So I think we can be of great benefit to the criminal justice system when we're using the techniques that we're good at and we're making a strong case for what we want to do and why we want to do it. Anybody else have questions about ethical? I ran through that quickly, but ethical issues using ABA in these kind of cases. Whatever you want to ask is fine. Dave?
Tim, I know nothing about this at all. It's really fascinating. Are there any contingencies to motivate people to feign or pretend to be incompetent?
Yes, most certainly there are. And that's a big, that's ever present on people's mind is when they, in a psychiatric facility, they say malingering.
Of course, yeah. But like many people, I've seen, classic films like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, where, that's about malingering and pretending to be incompetent. If a system like yours encountered someone malingering to be incompetent, how might you detect that, or would you, or is that not even relevant?
There's actually, they've even developed full psychological tests on this, or portions of other well-known tests. I'll tell you in a second what I think is most of the time the remedy. But however, if you see in the data like unusual patterns of acquisition, like they acquire it at one point and then don't at another, I think that could be useful data in something, or they acquire certain skills rapidly, like the interverbal skills and not the matching. That could be useful data. But from what I've seen, or at least the malingering cases that we knew we could detect, if they hung around with really mentally ill people, after a while they just couldn't take it anymore. They put on their act, which to me was usually just obvious malingering. But when they got around the real thing, they were ready to give it up. Except like in a few extreme cases where they're really, they're really in a lot of trouble and they're really motivated to get out of it. So I don't think we'll ever overcome the problem of malingering. But I do think, now that you mention that, I do think the data that we collect could be, I can see several ways it could be useful in that scenario. Okay.
What are the routes of entry into doing this kind of work?
I'm going to just put these up here since you asked that. Yeah. Well, like I said, I mean, when I was out in North Dakota, I met some people, they're on here right now, that they've been involved in this. And there's some that are, that misdemeanor cases that are in the community. And they're not all inpatient work. So for me, my route was to work for the forensic psychiatric hospital. Others maybe, and it is possible a behavior analyst could consult at a facility like that. I don't know of states that are asking for behavior analysts, as those are practitioners, BCBAs or other things, to help with competency cases. However, there's certainly a need for them, in my view, at the large psychiatric facilities. So, and they are consulted there, like I said. So I think there's several avenues to it. So I ask, how can we become behavior analysts, become involved in CST? I'm trying to make that happen with it when we've got more research, when we got more involvement that shows we can be useful. It's just like everything else, like in the school system, in the health professions, in OBM and business. Once we show we can help, then they might be seeking us out if they knew we existed. So, but most of the psychiatric care that I've seen and that I've read about is still very medical model. It's very much go to a doctor, find a medical treatment. They're not thinking of it in even psychiatric, non-forensic psychiatric cases. They're thinking of treating the disease. They're not thinking of behavioral improvement, skill acquisition, SDs that can be implemented. And if we have more research and development, I hope we can get that changed. And that goes to like the second part of that, best way to communicate these concepts to those who are professionals in the criminal justice fields. I think the better research, the better involvement, the better position we'll be in. And you can put discrete then as your last, the very last one. We can put discrete on there. There's a lot to this, and I hope I was able to answer at least some of your questions, but there's a lot more to be had. I'd like to work on development. I know they've done this in some of I just was at a meeting the other day, use of computer programs that can be developed to do the same kind of thing and can be sent to facilities or outpatient areas to work on. There's the references, and that's where you can contact me. And I'll put my phone number here in the chat. I'm going to stop sharing. Oh, we're almost out of time. Hey, that was great. What else do we have? Dave, anything?
Emma Dugan had a great comment. I'm going to dramatic read it. I got my involvement through the county, and we're contracted through the circuit court.
Cool. I'm going to have to talk to you, Emma.
Emma, do you want to tell us more about that?
Yeah, so I work for the county community mental health provider, and as such, we're contracted through the circuit court to do community restoration, to help with competency restoration. And so that's kind of where I get to use my skill set with all of this, and kind of do that intersection of this between.
Okay. She kind of cut off to the end, but yeah. Yeah, I will get with you, Emma, so I can learn more, because that's pretty important. That contracted, get a specific contract going.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we, I believe, speaking for Tim, we're looking to do more of these more frequently, upcoming throughout 2023, 2022, and 2023. So we want to keep an eye out for people who might in turn be presenters at future events of this.
Okay. All right.
Great.
That's all we got, folks. Thank you so much for coming. It's been a great evening. Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Thanks,
everybody.
It's been great.
Good presentations.
Thank you so much. And we'll get on the CE work, and go ahead and send me your BCBA certificate numbers if you haven't yet through the email. If you got any more questions, send them our way. Otherwise, that's all, folks.
Good night, everyone.
Right.
Good night.
Bye-bye, folks.
Right, thank you.
Likewise. Good night.
Bye now.